Empty house. Among the people I know, there is a little witch named Grace. Sweet appearance. People are also quiet. Like a little ghost. The reason why she is called the little witch. Because when we talk about ghosts or laugh at ghosts, she will stop us from doing anything. It's like she has a ghost relative. When we are in doubt. She told a shocking story. In the early years, Grace's family is very poor. When she was 5 years old, the family is still poor. Fortunately, her father was willing to endure hardships. A person alone with 500 yuan scraped together. Come out to do business. Within a few years, it has grown to a certain scale. Plus Grace is now 5 years old. It's time to go to school. So they brought Grace from the countryside to the city. Although the business has grown in scale, but there is not much funding. In order to have a better income, he invested all the money he earned. So when Grace came with her mother, Grace's father could only rent a very cheap house. This house is shabby, but it's very clean. Located in a shanty town. The owner bought a house outside. So I rented out this house. In fact, this house is far away from Grace's father's shop. But because it's cheap, and the area is large, compared with those prime locations, it's almost 10 times less. Plus the money is not loose. Choosing here is the best choice. As soon as I moved in, I felt a chill. I didn't care at the time. I thought it was because no one had lived here for a long time. Hardworking mother. The house was tidied up quickly. Everything is in good order. When their family moved in, the neighbors looked at them with strange eyes. I thought they were new here and I wasn't familiar with them. It will get better naturally after a long time. Grace's father has to watch the store. Rarely come back. Grace and her mother are the main people at home. Rise. Everything was fine at first. After a few days, Grace playing on the street. Suddenly I saw an old man in black clothes, wandering slowly outside the door of my house. 5-year-old Grace is very kind. I saw someone who I thought was looking for my dad. At that time, people often came to see my father. So I went up to ask. Grandpa, are you looking for my dad? Grace asked innocently. The old man looked depressed. He glanced at Grace. Then I looked at Grace's house. Speak in a low voice. This isn't a good place for kids. Tell your mother to move out. After saying that, he shook his head and left. Grace in a daze. I tilted my head and thought about what the old man said. At night, when my mother comes home from get off work, Grace passed the message to her mother. Mom smiled and said, there are renters here. Where is the old man? It's not fun for children to lie. There really were no old men living there at that time. Even the oldest neighbor. An old woman who picks up rags. The others are in their 40s or 50s. Or young students. Grace is very obedient. But I said it seriously. That old man is real, I didn't lie to my mother. Mom smiled and said, what if the old man says this to you again? You just say we paid the rent. If you want to move, you have to wait until the rent is due. Yes or no? Listen to my mother. Grace also thinks it makes sense. And she also saw the scene where her father gave money to the landlord. So I'm not afraid anymore. After a few days, Grace is playing. That old man is here again. I said the same thing to Grace. Grace politely told the old man what her mother had said. The old man heard this and roared. This house is mine. After saying that, he left angrily. Grace was so scared that she started crying. All of these. They were all seen by Aunt Wang, who was sitting not far away. She began to feel something was wrong. So I prepared to tell Grace's mother. Aunt Wang is also an outsider. Husband on construction site. She is a sanitation worker. I've become familiar with Grace's family recently. So we started chatting. She happened to be resting at home that day. She stood in the yard hanging clothes. Grace's mother came back in the evening. Aunt Wang quickly stopped her. Whispered to her, "Sister. Your daughter mentally ill?" This also scared Grace's mother. He hurriedly said, "Ouch. What's up? Your daughter is always talking to herself." And I started crying while talking. "You should go see a doctor right away." Grace's mother was so frightened by this that she ran home in a hurry. Grace's father again. As soon as I walked in, I saw Grace standing on a stool washing dishes. Her down quickly. This child knows how to care for his parents. Grace's mother felt warm in her heart. She pulled Grace over. Looked closely at her face. Found that it was washed white. No trace of crying. So I asked her. Grace told her mother. "Who did you quarrel with today?" "No one has. I'm playing alone," Grace says. In fact, she was afraid that her mother would know that she had quarreled with Grandpa. I will get angry and say I am ignorant. So I washed my face. "Did anyone see you arguing with someone? Don't lie to Mom." Grace's mother didn't give up and asked again. Grace shook her head in denial. "Just say no." Her mother couldn't do anything about it. At night, she told her husband about it. The husband listened. He smiled and said it was normal for children to talk to themselves. "What's all the fuss about?" Although that's what I said. But as a mother, born with a mysterious sense, she could sense that the child was hiding something. After a few days, everything is normal. This matter has been forgotten. Suddenly one night, Grace, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly waved her hands. Like fighting with someone. "Still crying for you to go away. Don't hug me or anything like that." Grace's mother was so scared that she quickly got up. "My forehead feels hot when I touch it." So he hurriedly took Grace to the hospital. After checking, I found nothing wrong. No fever either. The hospital is powerless. Looking at the increasingly frightened child, the mother was so anxious that she knelt down in front of the doctor. That doctor is also a new intern. "Where have you seen such a scene?" I went to find the director immediately. The chief doctor came soon. A thin old man with white hair. He looked at Grace's condition. Then whispered to Grace's mother. "You should go find a witch doctor. What might this kid have seen? It's a waste of money in the hospital. Listen to the doctor." Grace's mother just remembered what her child said before. And Auntie Wang's words. Suddenly I felt something strange. She quickly took the child and went back to find her husband. The husband was also puzzled when he heard this. "I haven't done anything wrong. How did this bad luck happen?" Fortunately, the child calmed down as soon as she met her husband. My father thought about it and decided to ask a witch doctor to see him. It happened that I told Aunt Wang about this matter. Aunt Wang's sister is in this business. This Aunt Wang is also a good person. I went to look for someone in the middle of the night. Grace wakes up at dawn. Under the questioning of my mother, Grace finally told the whole story. "I slept well last night. Suddenly the old man pulled me. To drive yourself out." At this time, Aunt Wang's sister arrived. Frowned as she entered the room. "This house is so dark. Why don't you put up statues to dispel the negative energy? After listening to Grace's narration, his brows relaxed and he smiled. It turns out to be a homesick soul. Just go find the landlord. The landlord came to collect the rent on this day. So Grace's mother told the story of the old man. At first the landlord refused to admit it, feeling ridiculous. Afterwards, Grace saw a photo in the landlord's car. Then he sighed. He said that the old man was his father and had been dead for 3 years. This is the house he lived in when he was alive. I'm really reluctant. When the children have enough money to take him to live with them, he doesn't want to go either. Mystery solved. The landlord felt bad about this happening. So no rent was collected. Just left. Aunt Wang's sister set up a formation in the room. Then I drew some paper money. Just said, "This person loves home." I performed a ritual to liberate him. But there will still be a few days. But it'll be fine in 3 days. Don't worry. Sure enough, a day or 2 ago, Grace can still see the old man sitting on the bed, looking at her with a sad face. On the 3rd day it disappeared. Grace's illness is also cured. Finally, Grace sighed and said, "My grandmother once said, there is a God in the sky. You can't escape anything you do. Ghosts are also spiritual. If you scold him, he will come after you." Then we found out the reason. Grace has been helping us. So I feel particularly sorry. Only Ryan, who was traveling with me, said heartlessly, "What happened next?" Grace says, "What happened next was that my father was afraid that this incident would continue to affect me. So grit your teeth. I rented a better house. Then it's alright." Ryan says, "Damn, this guy is so abominable." Not finished talking, we rush forward. Started to greet him with fists. I told you not to make fun of ghosts. Isn't he asking for a fight? Well, my friends, this episode ends here. The next movie is called The Horror of Sleep Paralysis.